I'm a big fan of like whatever situation that you find yourself in, just make the best out of it, right? Like I always say, hey, if you end up with a shit sandwich, you put some ketchup on it and fucking enjoy it.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Cazazza, the author of the upcoming memoir, Training with a SEAL. Today's guest has over 20 years of experience in the military, 14 of those years as a Green Beret. His first 4 years, he served as a combat engineer specialist in demolitions. Today, he runs the Green Beret Chronicles, it's where I found him, a veteran-owned business focused on providing guidance to future special operation operators and training civilians. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to introduce Jay Dorleus. Jay, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, of course, Gina. Whatever I can do to help society nowadays, that seems to be my life mission, is using all the military experience, the highs, the lows, and then sharing those experiences to hopefully help somebody out there that's probably going through the same things that I went through.
I absolutely love that you don't just focus on helping people to go through special ops, but you also help everyday civilians, people that aren't even interested in going into the military. What do you find that we are lacking as a society today?
See, nowadays, we're lacking a lot of leadership. It's funny that you mentioned that I also help civilians, because a lot of the trials and tribulations that we go through in special operations, some of the lessons learned could also be transferred to day-to-day life. We lack purpose, guidance, and leadership nowadays. And I'm like, well, when I first joined the military, I lacked a lot of those, right? I had to go find that purpose, that direction. And I found so in special operations. So if I can use the lessons learned in special operations to hopefully help somebody in the civilian sector, then why not, right? So that's my new purpose, because once I transitioned out the military, again, I was missing a purpose, guidance, and all that stuff, right? And I found it through you. So it's a constant venture of trying to find purpose at every level, at every echelon in your life. And I was lucky enough to have found it again, and now it's through you.
I never start really towards the end, but I want to ask, because what you just said, I don't want to forget. When you mentioned finding that purpose again, what's going on in your mind, and what steps are you taking to find that purpose? Because when we are in the whole finding purpose, we're feeling really lost. There's a lot of anxiety that can come from that. Can also be depression that comes from all that. There's all these negative emotions that happen and come from when you don't have a drive or you don't have a purpose somewhere. So what was going on for you when you were feeling like you didn't have a purpose, and how did you pull out of that to then, go in the direction of where you're at?
So it's different for every single person, right? But one point that I can speak to is the veteran community, because we all go through the same thing at one point in time as we get ready to transition, right? So I like to use the analogy of the last 20 or so years, I was in jail, right? I was very regimented. I was told what to do, how to do it, when to do it, what time I need to do it, in task, condition, and standing, how it needs to be done. And I executed on those points for 20 years. So fast forward, I'm at 19 and a half years that I'm like, oh, crap, this is happening. Like, I'm getting out. Like, I've known this for the past, 19 plus years. What am I going to do once I get out? And it's almost like I'm losing my identity all over, right? When I joined at the age of 18, I lost my identity as a civilian and gained a new one as a soldier. Now I'm getting ready to lose my identity as a soldier, and now I'm about to become a civilian. So that took me a while to figure out as far as what's the rest of my life going to look like. And I had to dig deep into, okay, I need to understand that being a soldier, being a special forces operator was it was a job. It was a part of my life that I did, but it's not the end of my life. So now I had to go back to the drawing board and figuring out, like, hey, who is Jay Dorleus? Like, what do I enjoy to do? At the end of the day, I was still, a husband. I was a father. I was a leader. Like, I was all of those things. So it's like, okay, so it doesn't end here once I take off. Life keeps going on. However, what do I enjoy to do? What do I love? And I was able to answer that question, because that's what it comes down to. You got to find out, like, what makes you happy, what you're good at, and what really impacts those around you. And for me, it was just leadership. It was leadership. It was mentoring. It was helping people problem solve. And that's what I really like to do. Like I would have soldiers come to me for their, with their problems, and I would, talk them through it, help them figure it out. And that gave me joy. So it's like, okay, well, once I get out, I don't necessarily have to stop doing that. Instead of doing it in the Army, I can do it in the civilian sector, right? I love special operations, and I know some of these guys that are getting ready to come into the military, they're going to go through the same problems, through the same pitfalls, through the same highs, and to the same lows that I went through when I went in. So why not create something that, allows me to coach, teach, mentor, problem solve, and show the next generation how to do it. Once I was able to, latch on to that, I hit the ground running. Now, I was fortunate. Not every single veteran is able to find their purpose post-military, right? I've always been really good at thinking, like 5 to 10 steps ahead of what needs to happen, right? So I was able to map it out, but there's a lot of veterans that don't have the opportunity, that are stuck in, we call it the good old years, right? The I used to be's, as opposed to realizing that at the end of the day, you still have your family, you still have your parents, you still have society looking to you for leadership. You don't have to stay in that I used to be a soldier mindset and share the good old stories and all of that. You can easily move on. But it takes realizing that this is going to come to an end, right? Once you realize that, hey, it's going to end, then you need to start planning the next chapter. And that's how I was able to get over it. Hopefully that answered your question, Gina.
Yeah, of course. So you've planned getting over it prior to getting out. And
Correct.
Which I think is really important too. You knew the time was coming, and you were like, I need to put the necessary steps in place to, shape that new identity and find that new purpose for who Jay is now in the civilian world. Now, how do you build the resilience, and how do you build the resilience when you're building your own company, like when you're having low lows, in terms of finding those clients, finding, for the money to come in, because no one's paying you right now, right? So how are you able to build that resilience to keep on going for what you want to do versus, okay, I need to get a steady paycheck right now?
So for me, again, because I can only speak for myself and my experience, it goes all the way back to my experiences, right? Because I always look at it as, look, throughout my entire, 40 plus years that I've been alive, I've overcame the impossible. I've gone through a lot of difficult times that I was able to crawl out of to get to the point that I am today. Right. So my mindset has always been, if I survive this, then I can easily survive what I'm about to face now. But it comes from having gone through those challenges and having overcome them, right? My mind is callous based on everything that I went in. It's something that I think that every individual needs to go through. You have to put yourself through hard times, because that lets you know what you're made of and what you're able to achieve. If you've gone throughout all your years as an individual and now you're 35 and you've never experienced adversity, never really are going to know how you're going to react when you're facing that adversity, right? And your immediate response might be to quit, as opposed to if at the age of 15, 16, 17, whatever, you've been put through, the ringer, whether it's, losing a jiu-jitsu match and not wanting to get back on the mat and finding the intestinal fortitude to get back out there anyways. That right there is slowly starting to build and callous your mind, right? You applied to Stanford and you don't get in, but you refuse to quit it and you keep hustling and you go to community college and you figure all this stuff out, and in the following year you get in. That right there shows you what you're made of. But if you've never gone through any of those things and you've never challenged yourself, you've never failed and you've never come, that's going to make it a lot more difficult for you, right? So for me, once I got out, my mindset was, holy shit, like I'm a Green Beret. I went through selection. I went through the Q Force. I've deployed several times and made it out of combat when I wasn't supposed to. This is nothing to me. Like if I can make it through all those trials and tribulations, I know I can make it over here. It just takes grit, resilience, and consistency, right? So that's how I approach everything that I go through in life, right? Whether it's raising kids, I'm like, well, that's a difficult challenge, but I've been through challenges before. Marriage, yep, been through challenges before, and I know if I stick to it, if I learn, if I adapt and overcome, then truly, like, I can make it through anything that I'm facing in life. And that's the mindset that I take with me throughout every new venture, throughout every new environment that I find myself in. Then so far, it's been working, right? You do anything long enough, eventually you're going to get good at it.
It's funny. I was a while back, I was listening to Navy SEAL talk about business, getting into business and stuff. And he always laughed when people like went crazy in business, like a shipping problem or a printing problem. And he was just like, no one's shooting at us, like this is a good day. And I always translate that to myself. Like if things aren't great or things are starting to take a turn, I always say that in my mind. I go, no one's shooting at me. And that makes me laugh. And it just, opens up my prefrontal cortex to just be more positive and like stay focused and not go into that negative spiral. And you talked about, going through hardships and going through tough times to building that mental toughness, because again, that's a learned behavior. It's a skill. And I want to start at your childhood before selection, because you have very interesting childhood story. I mean, your family came to America. You were in Haiti, and you and your brother stayed there. Their grandma being raised there, and then at 10, I think your brother was 8 and you were 10. You got sent here to be with your family in New York City, who were complete strangers to you essentially, and you had to assimilate, learn the language. I mean, just that has to be absolutely terrifying to leave everything that you once knew to then go to another place. And I believe you mentioned like you didn't know that you were officially like moving there. You just thought it was like a visit, and then to like learn a whole new language as you're like going to school and also dealing with social skills, because at 10 years old, I mean, this is where we're going into pre-puberty and teenage years, all like finding yourself and all this stuff. And then the fact that you come to America and from Haiti, it was no electricity. I think you mentioned, which I was just like, oh my goodness, like you eat dirt. You don't have, the meals that you have here. You don't have that fully stocked fridge. Meat is a luxury. What can you just go into like the fear, all like the challenges that you went through and what was going on from being at a young age going through that?
Yeah. So it's one of those things that I always say that you don't know what you don't know, right? So like Haiti was all I knew. So I thought, like this is how life was, right? And then moved to the US, and I, thank my mom and dad all the time because they were hustlers, right? Like I get my grit and my smarts definitely from them, because at such an early age for them, they were in their 20s. They made the decision that, hey, I'm not going to raise, my family in Haiti in these situations. And like I'll have conversations with them now, and they would tell me how their brothers and cousins and folks from the village in Haiti would laugh and make fun of them. They would just laugh it off, and then they would go out and start working the fields and just hustle and gardening and farm, and they would save up all their money. And then Lord and behold, they had 4 kids. They took 2 of them to France, and then from France they came to the US, and then they sent for us. And it was just the overwhelming, motivation that led them to getting out of Haiti and eventually sending for us. But for me, leaving Haiti and coming to New York, like I mentioned, culture shock for sure. And I thought I was just there for a couple of weeks and I was going back to Haiti. Like I was, because 10 years, like that's where I grew up. That's all I knew. But when they told me that I wasn't going to go back to Haiti, then it was like, yeah, I was sad for a little bit, but then they were really good at making sure that we understood, like, hey, this is an opportunity. Not everyone in Haiti gets this chance. Like, you need to make the best out of it. And then they were off to work because it was, like I'm one out of 8 kids in New York City. I didn't have my mom and dad didn't have time for the pity party of, oh, let me give you a hug. No, it was like, yep, we got to go to work to make sure you guys are fed, to make sure you have school for clothes and all that stuff. And then they went off. So it was me and my younger brother. He was in 3rd grade. I was in 5th grade. And off we went, right? I think I got to New York on like a Thursday, and like the Monday I was already at school, right? Like just trying to figure it out. And I figured it out, right? And that was the first time in my life where I dealt with adversity and I started to callous my mind, because it's like, immigrant from Haiti. Yes, I was around other Haitian kids, but most of them were born here, right? So there was still that, this guy doesn't know English, let's pick on him, or this guy's wearing funny clothes that he got from like the Salvation Army, let's pick on him. So the bullying in New York City was real, which I am glad happened to me because it made me the person that I am today, right? And then just learning the language, that really showed me at an early age that, okay, I'm capable of doing anything. If I can come to the U.S. at the age of 10 and learn English and overcome, Brooklyn and make it out of that, then yes, I'm definitely able to do whatever I want to do. And learning English within itself it's the skill that I'm still trying to master, right? Because the English language it's got weird words that, or that sound the same, but they mean different things. And so I'm still trying to figure that out. But to answer your question, as a kid going through that, it was definitely eye-opening, but it also showed me what's possible as far as what the human body, the human mind, and the human spirit is capable of accomplishing.
You said your parents, they were hustlers. They were working a lot. Were you essentially raising yourself, or was it your older siblings, or how present was your parents where you were, or was it more you? Like, I was learning self-discipline to get myself to school, to get myself around. Like, what was going on for you?
Yeah, so within my family, it's weird because we're born in pairs of 2, right? So my older brother, my older sister, they were both born like 2 years apart. And they initially went to France and Paris with my mom and dad. Myself and my younger brother were 2 years apart, and we were in Haiti together. So we grew up together. And then once we got stateside, my mom and dad had 4 additional kids in New York. So that's 8 of us. So we raised each other, right? So my mom and dad didn't have time to make sure I got to school on time, to make sure I was doing my homework, because again, they had to provide, and that was their main responsibilities: make sure we were clothed, make sure we had, food in the fridge, make sure we had electricity, make sure that we had the basic necessities. Everything else, as far as, making sure homework was done, making sure laundry was done, like that was, left for us to do, right? We had older brothers and sisters who would look after us and make sure that it was done. But at the end of the day, they had responsibilities. So it was up to my brother and I to make sure we did what we needed to do, right? And if that didn't get done, they were always there to discipline us, right? Haitian style. But to this day, like, I'm glad that it was done that way, because I was forced to grow up very early on, right? And that paid dividend, because when it was time for me to leave the household, there was really no second guess or no hesitation there, right? It was, yep, they did their part. They got me to New York. I learned the language. I'm graduating high school. I need to go pave my own way, right? There was no emotional connection there. So I'm glad that they did it the way that they did.
And then you decided to go into the service right away?
Correct.
Was that always your plan?
No. So life has a weird way of navigating you towards your, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Your path, or what you're meant to do, I guess. So initially, I wanted to be a New York City cop, because I was always, grateful for, this country for taking in my parents and I, right? It's like, here we are from Haiti, and we're able to come to this country and make something out of ourselves. So I was always grateful, and I wanted to pay back the dues in whatever ways that I can. And for me, it was always going to be public service, just because I wasn't a scholar. Like, I've always been like, I like to do stuff with my hands. So I wanted to be a New York City cop. So I went to the recruiting station. I was like, hey, I want to do this. And the requirements were either 2 years of college, which wasn't going to happen, or military service. And this was 2002. I just witnessed 9/11 a year prior. So I was like, yep, this is what I want to do. I need to get the military service. That's fine. I'll go get that, get out, and become a New York City cop. So I joined in July of 2003, went off to basic training, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, to become a combat engineer. And once I got there, I was like, man, this is pretty easy to me, because it was like everything was regimented, right? And my folks did a really good job at making sure that we knew, what the regiment was, what we were supposed to do, when we were supposed to do it. Like, so I was ready used to that lifestyle. And when I got to basic training and AIT, it was like, oh, I'm being paid to, be in the right place, right uniform. I'm being told what to do. I get to work out all the time, and I get to go to the range, and you guys are giving me free food and a place to live. Like, I thought it was heaven, right? Coming from Haiti and, in a small 2-bedroom apartment in New York City, I was like, man, this is fun. Got done with that, got to my first duty station, and it was, like a small, close-knit type of dudes, and we would do everything together, and I just fell in love with it. And I decided to stay after experiencing it.
So I want to talk about when you were 19 and in the service, and, your buddies, it's just even hard for me to even grasp, are essentially like being blown up around you. I mean, they're dying around you at 19 years old. I mean, this is for my own. Do you still get nightmares about that? Like, that to me, I feel like would just be plastered in my mind. And I don't think it's something you could ever prepare for. I don't think it's something you could ever prepare for. And what was going on the first time you're in combat? And essentially, like, I wanted to go into the service when I was younger. I was in ROTC and stuff, and it was something I was interested in. But I couldn't even, I remember in 7th grade, we had to watch The Patriot, and your parents had to sign it. So, you could all go, and I threw it out. And then they were like, I'm like, my parents didn't sign. They won't want me to watch this movie. It was just because I couldn't even see somebody. War is very gruesome and it's rough. And I didn't want to subject my 13-year-old self to the reality of war. And then I realized there's no way I'm going to be able to do this, because there is a chance that we go to war, and that's a possibility of seeing. So what was going on for you? What were their fears as you're seeing people dying around you? Like, it could be me. How do you work through this to stay focused on what's going on, especially when you're seeing one of your buddies dying or injured?
I got done with basic training in July of 2003. Got to my first unit. And September of 2003, we were in Iraq. So it was like fast paced. We got there, did mind processing, and they're like, yep, we're going to, war. Like, we're going to cast the tail end of the Iraq invasion. So there was no time to process it or any of that stuff. But I was like, you know what? This is what I signed up for. I knew like this was going to be a strong possibility, just because I signed up while war was going on. I didn't really know what war was. I don't think any of us do until we get there, because you see the movies and you see the video games and you see all that other stuff. But it's nothing like that. And I think that saved me a little bit, because when I got there, like, I was expecting like the Hollywood effect, right? With bombs going off all around you, bullets, and like, that's what I was expecting. But it wasn't like that at all. It was like I was back at Fort Ryan, Kansas, only I was going outside the wire, and I was looking for these bombs, right? So the first couple of months there was good. I was with my buddies, it was hot. We were going out there and doing what we were trained to do. And then it got real whenever IEDs started going off, and you started seeing, the dudes getting blown up, limbs all over the place. And then it hits you like, holy crap, like, dudes are, like, my buddy I was just hanging out with yesterday, like, he's dead, like, he's not, I'm not going to see him again tomorrow, right? So then that starts to set in. But as soldiers, at least in my case, I had to make myself understand that, hey, I still got guys to my left and to my right that are still living. And until something happens and they're gone, like, I need to keep putting my best foot forward, and I need to keep doing my job so they have a chance of getting back home. And I think we all had that same mindset within the platoon. It was do our job, breathe when we get a chance to, but we need to, stay focused, or else more guys are going to die. And that's how it was for 12 months, right? Because the military is really good at, like, they'll give you like 5 to 6 hours to breathe. And then it's like, hey man, we still got a water fight, so we do a really good job at putting it in the back of our minds and then dealing with it whenever we get a chance to. A lot of us don't really get a chance to, though. And that's what leads to the suicide and the drinking and the substance abuse. But to answer your question, while I was down there, as I was witnessing all these horrible acts at the age of 19, it was, yep, I'm just going to lock that up and then keep doing my job. Lock it up, keep doing my job. And it was like that for about, 17, 18 years. And then it's like, oh, it's time to get out. I should probably do something about all these things that I have locked up in the back of my head. And that's what prompted me to start getting the help that I needed, right? I got some help after the Iraq trip. And that kind of fixed what happened there. But then, of course, I went to a special operation and just kept witnessing horrific acts and so on and so forth. But it's part of the job, and it's part of what you sign for when you join the military. And it's something that I tell kids nowadays whenever I get a chance to speak with them on a mentorship call. Like, I want them to understand that, yes, I'm proud of you for doing this, but you need to see the holistic picture. It's not all about, getting all the cool guy gear and growing the beard and the hair. Like, you got to understand, like, you're going to see some horrific stuff, and you have to be ready to deal with it, right? Yeah, the title of, Special Forces Operator or Navy SEAL or a combat controller, yeah, that's cool and all, but that's like, it's 95% horrible stuff and like 5% like sexiness, if that, right? Because when I was deployed, like, as a, tip of the spear type, operator, we're not around people for them to see, the big, bare chested, burly. You don't see, like, people don't see us. We're in the woods, 2 to 3 days on end, looking for bad dudes. And then whenever we come back in after, 6-month deployment, people are like, oh, those are the guys that live over there. It's like, there's nothing sexy about that shit, like, nothing whatsoever, right? So I try to make people understand that, like, yes, like 5% of it is cool, but 95% of it, it's horrible. That's why I preach to guys, you got to know why you want to do this, because you're doing it for that 5% that everybody sees on social media and everybody thinks is cool, then you're not going to make it. But yeah, I just found a way to lock all that stuff in until I was able to unlock it once I got in front of the therapist, to answer your question.
Prior to the therapy, you were getting into a lot of fights when you were in the service. You were in jail a lot because, you didn't know how to process your emotions, and you realized like you were heading towards a rough path. What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned? Well, first of all, when did you realize that you were heading towards a rough path? Did something happen? Because you were in jail more than once. It wasn't like the first time was like, I need to get help. It was like, what spiraled where you were like, I'm heading towards a rough place? And then I'll ask my next question.
Yeah, so once we got back from Iraq, after that trip, we lost a bunch of dudes. I want to say it was like, because my platoon lost, 5 guys, and then we had other platoons in the company that were losing guys to IEDs. So within that year, the person that, the person that I was that joined the Army out of, Brooklyn, New York, I was a completely different person just within that span of the year. And I got back, started drinking heavily, started fighting, because it was one of those things, like the guys that made it back with us, with me, it was like we were, close, because we've experienced so much stuff within that year, where we got back to the United States and we were in a college town, K-State was right there. So we would go down downtown and party and do all this stuff. And it's like my little group of guys could do no wrong. If any civilians looked at us the wrong way, or if they said something to one of my guys, it was like entire platoon was jumping on them, because it's like, we just survived a year in hell, just to come back here and deal with your crap. It's not happening. So there was a lot of that stuff going on. And it wasn't just my unit, right? The entire 1st Infantry Division, like, we were all like that. So we were raising hell across Aggieville like nobody's business. And for me, my buddy got into a fight, and the cops show up and they went to arrest him, and not thinking about anything, not thinking that, hey, this is America, there's rule of law, you can't really put your hands on a cop. All I saw was, oh, that's my buddy, we survived war together, like, who is this to try to put him in handcuffs, right? So I grabbed the cop, threw him, and then I got locked up. But when it hit for me was, oh, this is a felony, because I put my hands on a cop. That's technically a felony, or they can trial me and hit me with a I think it was, I can't remember which class it was, but it was either way. If I got hit with a felony, I can't carry guns in the military, and the military would have no use for me, and they'll kick me out. So that's when it hit for me. It was like, holy crap. My mom and dad made it through all this shit to get out of Haiti. They went through all the legal battles to become, citizens, and they've given me a chance, and I'm about to throw it all away. All right. So for me, it was just the fear of letting my family down after everything that they've done to get me to the point where I was at. And I was like, I need to get it together, or else I'm going to be a nobody. I'm going to go back to New York. I won't be able to become a cop because of, the dishonorable discharge that I'm going to get from the military. And I can't stay in school. So what am I going to do with my life? Right. So that was the moment where it all switched for me. And it ended up working out, because the city of Manhattan, down in Kansas, they realized that, hey, the nation is at war. These soldiers are dealing with a lot, and this is what's leading them to act out the way that they're acting. So they took a lot of pity on us, as far as giving us, like, letting us off easy, right? So I didn't get hit with a felony. It was my first offense as far as putting hit on a cop. So they worked with the leadership, and I just had to do some community service. And I got off clean. So after that incident, I was like, I got to go get help. So I started seeing a psych, and everything just got put into perspective. And what it boiled down to was, at least for me, what I did to help it make sense to me was, hey, check it out. You signed up for war. Prior to you going to war, people were passing away every day, right? Accidents were happening. Dudes were, dying in training accidents, or post, car accident, motorcycle accidents. People are going to die whenever they're meant to die, right? And I had to make myself understand that as a human being, we don't control that. I've seen guys survive the most unsurvivable situation at war just so they can get home and die sitting at a traffic light, right? So I'm like, how do you explain that? So I started to look at it from that perspective, right? If my buddy died, it's time to go. I don't control when he dies. God does that. The guys that we lost at war, it was just their time to go. If they didn't die in Iraq, they were going to die stateside somehow, right? So I started to reframe my thinking and started looking at it from that perspective. And that really helped me with the rest of my career and just how I looked at life in general.
That pretty much answered my second question as well. Thank you so much for that.
Sorry about that.
No, I loved it. No, I love when that happens. It's less talking for me. We're here for you. I want to know, in the very beginning, when you first got into the military, you were going into basic training, and you said you really struggled with the team aspect of it. You said you had like a chip on your shoulder, and it was more like individual versus team stuff. And then though, throughout your military career prior to being a Green Beret, you were squad leader. You became a leader. So how and what did you learn from chip on your shoulder, individual thinking, to then leader, teamwork, team mentality, to being a leader that helped you to excel to where you were?
Yeah. So going into basic training, I think, to an extent, everybody has that, especially for me. Like I was out of, Brooklyn, New York, is that reputation that we're like bad, tough dudes. And there was like a little group of us too that came out of that area. And we went into basic training and I said, we were tough guys, right? We were, not to be messed with and all of that. So we were pretty much individuals doing whatever we wanted to do, while the drill sergeant were trying to, build this cohesive team within the platoon. And that just wasn't happening because we kept bucking the system. We kept, getting in trouble. And it took them about 3 or so weeks to finally like break us down and make us understand that, like the entire purpose of basic training is to, shed you of your civilian identity and make you, a soldier, right? So you know how to move within a team setting. And we just didn't understand that. And we went through an obstacle course while in basic training, and that really drove home like teamwork. Like we had to do it together. My mindset change of, this Army thing isn't an individual game, it's a team game. Then I excel like nobody's business, because it was like, I just need to do this. I just need to, doing my own thing. Because whenever we would do that, everyone else would get in trouble. It's that mass punishment mindset, right? We would mess up over here, and then the entire platoon would get in trouble, and then they would be mad at us. So we're like, man, we need to stop doing this.
Yeah.
And once we did, everything worked out. At basic training, once those 3 weeks that went by, and I learned the concept of teamwork, that stuck with me, throughout the rest of my career, which played a dividend to when I got in those leadership roles, because I knew what being on a team could do. Like I knew the power that it had. So every leadership position that I was in, the first thing that I tried to do was build a cohesive team. Like I want guys that care about each other. That's willing to do anything for each other, because, in the business that we're in, whenever we go, downrange and we go to war and we're fighting these impossible, battles, that's what's going to get us through, is the guy to our left and to the right. If you have a bunch of individuals that are in it for themselves, they're not going to want to fight as hard, right? Like fighting for yourself is one thing, but fighting for someone else, it just gives you that extra advantage, right? That's like, a father or a mother fighting for their kids. Like you are willing to put it all on the line and go that extra distance. So with that lesson learned in basic training, I was able to take it to the team leader position, squad leader, and eventually the platoon sergeant. And the way that I did things is what, caused me to excel within those positions, because I focus on building, the teams with lasting relationships, right? To this point, like I still speak with guys that were, in my squad from, 18 plus years, and it speaks volume to, how I was able to build those teams.
Today's episode is sponsored by my favorite jewelry company, Omnia. Omnia blends genuine crystals with cutting-edge NFC technology to create the world's first smart crystal bracelet. This bracelet connects to the Elevate web application, giving you a membership to over 200 self-care resources, from meditations to journals to breathing exercises and so much more. Visit discoveromnia.com and use code MindsetPodcast for 40% off. DiscoverOmnia.com, your key to wellness. What advice do you have for people to build a strong team?
I tell you what, this one is simple, and I don't understand how people keep messing it up, right? It all comes down to caring about the individual. Going into work and just spending a little bit of time and just finding out how that person's day. You know what I mean? And then asking about their family. Hey, how are your kids? How's your wife? What you guys doing this weekend? It's all the simple, basic stuff, right, that folks just don't do nowadays. That goes a long way. And then just planning activities together. Like, within my platoon, like we would play like organized football, right? We would have, second squad versus, first squad. And then we would just play, just have fun together. We would have, monthly gatherings to where we'd bring all the families, to where we would just, hang out, drink beer, and just barbecue together, right? Just you had to do those small things to bring everybody together, because that's how they're gonna start caring about each other. When they're downrange and they're fighting, then you're like, oh, I'm gonna give it 110% because I know Jim's just had a new baby and I want to make sure he gets back to his, daughter or whatever, right? Like that's how I will see do it. It's because at the end of the day, if you take care of the people, they'll take care of the mission, right? We have a saying in special operation that says mission first, people always. Like as long as you take care of your people, they're going to take care of you by making sure the mission gets accomplished. Mm-hmm. If you're a CEO somewhere, take care of your employees, they're going to make sure that you meet all those milestones and the work's going to get done because they're invested in you. They don't want to let you down as a leader, right? Like and I've seen this throughout my entire career, right? Like most recently within special operations, like I would send guys to like all these different schools. Like I would, send them back home early from a deployment, send them to like sniper school supported. Like I would, go out of my way to make sure that they were taken care of. And when they go to these schools and something happens and they fail, like they would cry, because they're like, oh, I felt like I let you down. Like, I'm sorry you're doing all this stuff for me. And I'm like, it's like, I reassure them, like, it's fine, but that's the level that you wanted at. Like, because people won't want to let you down and they're going to go the extra mile to make sure that you're taken care of because you've been taking care of them, throughout their entire career.
Let's switch from that part of your military career to then Green Beret, because you were a squad leader, we worked your way up, and then you decide to go Green Beret route. You have to go through selection, right? Which sucks because it's supposed to suck, right? And how do you go from leading to then selection? And what was going on in your mind throughout that? Were you ever like frustrated on the fact that like I was a leader and now I'm like, I have to rebuild and rebuild? I
never saw it that way because I decided to go to selection after, my second deployment as a combat engineer. Okay. And it was more just the frustration side of it on my end because, like during the early stage of the Iraq war, especially with my job as a route clearance guy, like we were responsible for going out and finding the IED and, disposing of them so other people could, move throughout the battle. I felt like we were just pawns, like we were just sent out there to find them. If they blow up on us, then oh well. And so I got tired of doing that. Like I was tired of being reactive because we lost guys in the 07 trip too. And I was like, man, I can't do this for 20 plus years. Like, I want to be on the other side where I'm trying to get to these guys before they go out and put these items out there. So that was one of the driving forces behind special operations. I wanted to be proactive. I wanted to be out there hunting. So my entire mindset changed when I went to selection because I was, looking at doing something completely different. But the concept of teamwork never really did because that's something that's huge at selections, teamwork. So I learned that very early on and that carried into selection and that made it a little bit more feasible for me.
Now you really struggled in the land nav part of it. Makes sense. You're from a city. Like, I get it. And you had no idea like how to do it. I mean, I get it. Put me in the woods. Every tree looks the same. And how did you figure it out and deal with the frustration of learning something new in such a short period of time?
So for me, it was resiliency because I was of the mindset that, hey, other folks are doing it, then why can I do it? Once you start Land Navigation Week, because it's an entire week. So I have an entire week to learn this so I can pass on the back. But at the very beginning, they give you this class, this Land Nav class that shows you all these different techniques on how to do it. The guys that were, from the country, like they knew exactly what was going on. Me, on the other hand, like I didn't know what I was doing. I did a couple of iteration back in Kansas before I got a selection, but it was nothing like that. Like North Carolina, Camp McCall has its own like ecosystem. Everything's just different. So when I got out there and I started doing it, it was frustrating seeing others around me get it so fast. But it's that constant, hey, don't give up. Like if they can do it, so can you. And just staying consistent. Every time I made a mistake, I learned from it, and I got better, and I got better. And by, day 7, I knew everything that I needed to know to pass. Yeah, it was frustrating, but another thing that helped me a lot was the fact that I was in shape. So I had the ability to make those mistakes, and then just using like my cardio that I had when I went, I would erase those mistakes by, running all the way back to the start point and saying, okay, I went left instead of going right. Let me go right this time. And I just kept doing that until, okay, I made all my mistakes. I learned what I needed to learn, and then I figured it out. So I was learning on the fly, essentially. But I credit a lot of it to me being in shape.
It's interesting because it kind of reminds me of, I remember Coach Mack used to say, build up your strengths. And when you build up your strengths, your weaknesses will follow. And It sounds like that's, what you were doing. It's like, well, I was already in shape. That's my strength. I'm going to use this to my advantage. I'm going to keep building it up. And then the weakness of land nav is just going to go with it. And how better, like, do you feel confident now? Like, put you in the middle of the woods, you could find your way?
Oh, yeah.
You got it now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Me and the kids go camping on a regular now because because selection was 16 years ago. So since then, like, I've been in woods all over the world, right? So it's one of those skills. Yes, it is perishable, but the more you do it, the better you get at it, and it just stays with you.
That's really cool, actually, that you bring it down to your kids. Teach them that.
Well, they got to learn somehow, right? So.
That's true. That's true. I actually used to beg my parents to go camping when I was younger. I was like, can we please go camping? And my parents were just like, no. My dad was like, there's no TV there. My mom was like, there's too many bugs. And I was like, everyone else is going camping. And my dad's like, you're going on a cruise. And I'm like, I want to go camp. Like, I didn't understand. Like, to me, they were giving me like the best of the best. And to me, all I just wanted was to experience like camping thing. But then I realized, like, it's not for me. Now, for you struggled, you got recycled at one point. Can you tell us that story? Because I don't really remember it listening to it. You got recycled, and it messed with you because you felt like a failure. And what I want to know is what happened that got you recycled, and then how you got out of that failure mindset to not let it affect your performance for when you came back into the game.
Yeah, so got done with selection, and then I moved to phase 1 of the qualification course. Qualification course is about a year long to become a Green Beret. So small unit tactics was what I recycled, and it's essentially Ranger School on steroids is what it is, because you figure with selection, you're opening it up to all these different jobs around the Army. Once everybody makes selection, now you got to put them all on the same page. You got to start building everybody up to the same skill level, right? And small unit tactics just showed you how to fight in the woods, essentially, right? And coming from an MOS where I wasn't doing that, there's a steep learning curve, as opposed to the guys that were infantry that had Ranger tabs. They knew the tactics. They knew all the different operating procedures. So when I got there, I was essentially learning from the water, right? And then I got to the point where I just wasn't performing the way that I should have been at that point within that phase. So we had a couple of counseling sessions, and I ended up getting dropped from that class. So I recycled into a different class. And no one likes to fail. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things that, especially at that point in my career where I overcame so much and was successful with Big Army, and to get to the qualification course to, recycle, it was a punch in the gut. But at the end of the day, it wasn't over, right? And I just learned from it, studied, and then got back out there and performed. But it all goes back to resiliency, to be honest with you. Just knowing that, hey, if anybody can do it, like so can I. It's not gonna be easy. If it was, then everybody would have a Green Beret, would have a long time. So I just stuck to that mindset of I've overcame so much. I'm here now. I'm here for a reason. I just need to keep going until they tell me not to come back. And even then, I'm show up some more and see if they change. You just got to have that never quit mindset, because that's what's going to get you through a lot of this.
Okay, I like what you just said in terms of like, even if they tell me to go, I'm like to leave, I'm still going to do my best to figure out how to get back, right? And I really love this one story because I feel like so many people could get so much out of this, because not many people do what you did. You became a Green Beret and you found out like you're not going on missions. This is not what you signed up for. And you're just on the night shift and you're watching screens and you're signing people in, and this is not what I wanted, right? And anybody could have taken that and been like, well, I'm not going to give them my all. They didn't give me what I wanted. Or they can just be like really taking it super negatively and then negatively impacting everyone around them, because that's what happens when we become super negative and resentful. But you didn't. You didn't. You became the man there. You were just like the best person, the best sign-in person that anyone could have. And you ended up getting what you wanted out of that experience. Like you ended up changing the game. And I love that. I want to talk more about that. And if you could just share that, because the positive experience you made from being thrown into a situation that you didn't want to be in got you to where you wanted to be. And it really talks about, and I know you talked too about like the importance of treating people with respect and all that stuff. So can you please share this? Because I think this is just so valuable.
Sure. And I'm a big fan of like whatever situation that you find yourself in, just, make the best out of it, right? Like I always say, hey, if you end up with a shit sandwich, put some ketchup on it and fucking enjoy it, right? Because it all boils down to mindset. So I finished the qualification course, and I think everyone is of the same mindset, right? Like we just got done after a year plus of training. Now we're ready to put all that stuff to use. We want to get on a team immediately, and we want to put on range, and we want to do work. That's how it works. So I got to third group. They were already deployed. They were already in Kandahar. So I was like, perfect. And we had the headquarters element. Like we were responsible for all the special operation units in Afghanistan. So I'm like, okay, perfect. So I get there, and I get put in the B dock. The B dock is like the base defense place up at Bagram Air Force Base. It's like big Army, like as a special forces operator. Like I mentioned earlier, like that's not where we're at. We're not, on the big base and hanging out with the regular. Like that's not what we're meant to do. We're pushed out to the small outposts, and we're hunting the enemy. So that's where I wanted to be. So I spoke with the leadership there. I was like, hey, I just got a Q course. I'm ready to go. Like send me to Kandahar at the time was where I wanted to go. That's where all the guys were. And they were like, no, we need bodies here. And, as a new guy, you got to give us 6 months here. Then you'll go back to Fort Bragg. And then you'll get on the team, based on how you perform here. I was like, that's not what I wanted to hear. But it is what it is. I'm not gonna, because I'm a new guy. As a new guy, you don't really have any say so. You don't want to, burn any bridges. It's like I'm a private all over it. Right? So I was like, okay, no problem. So I did reverse cycle. So I was on night shift for a couple of months. So I would work from like 8 p.m. to like 8 in the morning. And at night, I would just, man the battlefield, well, not the battlefield, but man the post for anybody coming to visit the base camp that we're in. So I did that, and then I eventually got to day shift. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to make the best of it, right? So I started to essentially take over the base, like doing everything, treating people right, building relationships, caring about people, talking to people, and just being a good person. Just being a leader is what I chump it up down to, because the headquarters element was all the special operation guys, like all the Green Berets were there, but the base camp itself was a bunch of support kids, right? A bunch of support MOSs, bunch of support jobs. So I just went around and just treat everybody with respect, even though they wasn't a Green Beret. I just treat them like a man or treat them like female, like whatever. And eventually, like, they started, coming to me for stuff. They started to, like, favor me over some of my leaders. And jealousy took control of that situation. And eventually they gave me the boot because I was becoming, I guess, too popular on that base camp, right? I was like, that person needed something. And then all I did was get it for them. Like, that's all I did, right? But eventually it got out of control and they were like, you know what? Like, you need to go to Kandahar because, life is too good over here for you. Like, you have all these people thinking that you're, Green Beret Jesus. So I was like, all right, whatever, man. Like, I wanted to go down there anyways. But yeah, it really boiled down to, like, what I was there, because I've never had an ego, even till today. Like, I don't let that, take control of everything. Humble all the time, treating people with respect, and then just going out of your way to help people goes a long way, because they see you as this person that's a badass. So when you go out of your way to help them, even the lowest guy on the totem pole, they're like, holy shit, like, thank you. And now that guy's willing to do whatever he can to help you out, and that's a concept that I kept throughout my entire career, and it's paid dividend to this point. So yeah, that's how that entire situation developed. But I got what I wanted. I got on the team, and then the rest of that deployment was pretty good.
I really love that story. So thank you for sharing. I'm sure you said it a bunch of times, so I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
So you share with the Green Beret Chronicles, you share a lot of your mistakes, your downfalls. You don't end with your coaching, especially like to go through selection and stuff. Like, you don't want people to make this. You want people to succeed. Yep. And you want them to not make your mistakes. And same when you take on coaching and helping civilians. So what's the biggest mistake or downfall that you made that you share with everyone because you don't want them to repeat it?
Yeah. So before I get to that question, so within the military itself or within special operations, like, no one cares about the success, right? Because when I look at, let me not say no one, I don't care about the success, because when we're out there and we're doing this job and we clear the building, right, we hit that corner and we shoot that. Yeah, you're supposed to do that. That's why, the military spends, I think it's like $1 million just to make one Green Beret. That's why they spent $1 million over the span of a year to make one guy, right? You're expected to do that. And then once you get to the team, you get all these additional training to make you that lethal guy. So you're expected to do all the tasks that are listed out. So no one cares about the success, right? What they care about are the failures, because that's what leads to people dying. And that's where I want to focus on, because I'm like, yeah, the cool guy stuff, yeah, cool. Like, yes, that happens. However, that 1%, the one time that you'll do something right, that's what's going to lead to somebody not coming home to their post. So that's how I was in the military, and that's how I am now that I'm on the social media space. It's like, okay, like, I'm not making, content about how cool I was and how cool shit is, because that doesn't matter. What matters is the things that went wrong that led to, either people dying or that could have led to people dying. That's what we need to focus on, because that's what the next generation needs to hear. That's how they'll learn not to make that mistakes. Because if you're not talking about the 1% of bad stuff that happened, guess what they're going to do? They're going to repeat those 1% because they don't know about it, right? So yeah, to get back to your question, I would say the number one mistake that I made when I was going through special operations was probably not seeking out a mentor earlier on in my career. And I think it's just one of those things, like, you get there and you're just pumped up and you're ready to do the job, and we're at war, so everybody's gone, everybody's swapping out. That's one thing that I wish that I had done differently, was having a mentor that could have guided me through some of the different situations that I found myself in, to include that BDOC incident where I ended up getting shipped out, even though it worked out for me, but it was still in bad light because they did it out of spite instead of doing it because it was the right thing to do. Had I had a mentor, I could have navigated that situation a lot different instead of it playing out the way that it did. So that's one thing that I harp on now, that I'm in a position to help mentor some of these kids. It's like, hey, like, if not me, find somebody that's going to mentor you, that's going to show you how to do things the right way, because it's a different beast. Because once you get there, you can't expect the guys that are in uniform to mentor you. Yeah, they'll help you out to an extent, but they also have jobs that they have to do, right? So it's not going to go to the extent that it should, because they're leading teams, they're leading companies, they're leading battalions. They have stuff going on that's going to really require their attention. So you got to have somebody outside that unit that's going to sit you down and tell you, hey, man, like, you're messing up. Hey, you were wrong. You need to do X, Y, and Z. That goes a long way. That could have saved me a lot of headaches. And I try to make sure these guys understand that.
And what do you have for everyday listener, all the people listening here? What do you have for us to develop that we could do on a daily basis to build that mental toughness, that grit, or to tap into our untapped potential?
Yeah, so I would say it all starts with discipline. I think it's a cliche answer, but I think everything boils down to discipline. If you have discipline, then you can, accomplish whatever you want to accomplish in life. And it starts with, laying out a schedule, right? Creating a schedule and sticking to it, because that right there solves a lot of issues that we have nowadays, right? So let's say you tell yourself, hey, at 4:30 every morning I'm getting, and then once I get up, I'm gonna drink water, I'm gonna go for a walk. Like, just lay out a schedule. And every time you stick to that schedule, all you're doing is just building that mental toughness. Is one, you're getting that dopamine hit of, oh, I did what I said I was going to do. And when you don't do it, then you're going to feel like crap because you're breaking a promise to yourself, right? So if you tell yourself, yeah, I'm going to get up at 4:30, and then once I'm up, I'm going to go running, and you actually do those things, those are small victories. Oh, man, like, I'm doing really good. Hey, I'm going to read, 10 pages today. And you actually do it, like, you're keeping promises to yourself, right? Hey, you know what? I'm going to go hang out with my kids, and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Keeping promises to yourself, right? Hey, I'm not going to lie. Hey, I'm not going to eat soda. It all boils down to discipline. And the more you stick to that schedule and reinforce the good things in your life, then the better off you'll be. Hey, I'm open a business, right? Guess what? You're going to stick to that schedule. Hey, within 3 months, I'm going to make, 1,000 cold calls, right? It all goes down to discipline. And if you get in a pattern of doing what you're telling yourself you're going to do and maintaining those promises, then regardless of what the task is, you're going to do it. As opposed to if you get in the habit of breaking promises and lying to yourself, then it's going to be the same thing. Regardless of how small the task or how big the task is, it's the same concept, right? And that helped me out because while in the military, like, I told myself, hey, I'm going to make it to selection, right? I'm going to pass the qualification. So when time got tough and I was in a position where I couldn't quit, guess what? I made a promise to myself that I'd never broken a promise to myself before. Why am I going to start now? So even though it was tough and it sucked, but I'm like, I can't live if I break this promise to myself. Like, I got to look myself in the mirror. And if I quit because it got tough, like, what else am I going to break as far as promises, right? So I think that's a good place to start, is start with, structuring your day and keeping those promises to yourself, because not only is that going to teach you discipline, it's also going to teach you mental toughness.
That was a great answer. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being on the show, Jay. Thank you.
Oh, of course. Anytime.
Thank you, everyone that's listening. Please go like, share, comment, subscribe, become a Patreon member so you get bonus episodes and extra goodies that only our Patreons get. And thank you so much, and I will see you guys next time.